Welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I am joining Kevin Graham and Colin Watt for the ACSOM Bulletin. It is a Wednesday, do not adjust your sets. I'm sitting in for Brian, who is normally part of the Wednesday trio, and we are going live on the various platforms: Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, but it still doesn't like the Twitter. StreamYard is not liking the Twitter. So you're going to have to go and watch us on YouTube, I guess, and we'll post the links later on the Twitter pages. So it's been a few days since I've been on the Bulletin. Plenty is happening in the world of Celtic. But let's kick off by talking about that headline that we've got across the bottom of the page. Postecoglou gets Celtic Football Club and our fans. Now the club must back him. The reason I've put that up today, guys, is we'll have all seen the brilliant pictures and the content on social media. Ange Postecoglou getting involved with Celtic fans last night at the Tommy Burns story. And I think we need to open up with that for a number of reasons. Now, we had David Carswell on the show a couple of months ago, and he was in here with three of Tommy's kids. And we were talking about this stage show that they were producing. And last night, of course, it was on the stage. Who turns up but the current Celtic manager to pay tribute to the ex-Celtic manager? And from what we've heard from the WhatsApp group and everybody on social media, he was more than happy to engage with Celtic fans, get his picture taken. And that's what I mean. He gets Celtic Football Club. Colin, I'm going to come to you first. How reassuring is that? I mean, does that show to you that here's a man who wants to steep himself in the traditions of the club, get to know the fans, he's happy to spend some time, him and his wife, speaking to Celtic fans, but also pay tribute to one of our best loved managers?
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, it's very heartwarming to see that, because it shows that he's got the encouragement to kind of go and learn more about the role that he's in just now. I mean, everybody knows that Ange isn't someone who has been steeped in Celtic's history. He knows about Celtic and he knows rough parts of the Celtic history, because you wouldn't expect him to. He hasn't grown up in the west coast of Scotland. He hasn't grown up in Scotland or Ireland. He won't know everything. But showing that he's got this encouragement to go along and to listen to the story that was put on by a fantastic group who I have to say, a shout out to them, because they've been practicing that play in the Greenock Celtic for the last number of weeks. There's a number of people involved in that come from down this way, so hats off to them. But to see Ange, and do you know what? The fact that he's waiting up, he's waiting for people to take their photos with him, he's going backstage, he's meeting up with the guys. It's not the first time we've seen this from Ange Postecoglou. We saw it a couple of weeks ago when he met the fan after the game alongside Callum McGregor. And it just shows you that when you've got someone who is willing to put that extra bit of effort in, it goes a long, long way to building a relationship with the fans. Something that wasn't there last season, and Ange just kind of clicked onto that, and very quickly he's looking to make amends, and it's got to be commended.
You know, when we talk about the first part of that, getting the club, and that's turned almost into like a cliche. But I think Colin makes a good point, Kevin. Here is a man who will have been aware of Celtic Football Club because he's been involved in football, no matter where you are in the world. We are a globally renowned football club and a brand. He'd have been aware of us, but, you know, there's no way that we're going to believe a story like we heard from Paolo Di Canio, that he always had a fondness for Celtic because he always chose the green and white hoops when he was playing Subbuteo. Or, you know, someone in Kenya always listening into the Celtic games when we were playing Ross County away from home and stuff like that. I always take that with a pinch of salt. Ange just never professed to be that guy. But what he did say in his opening press conference that we were part of is that he was well aware of the club and the heritage and the traditions. And any manager coming into a football club will say that. I think what we're getting proof that that is the case from Ange Postecoglou. He's actually taken the time to get to know the fans that obviously are supporting him. And with regards to that, I think it's important that we need to back him, because, you know, January's just round the corner. We have an opportunity here to push on the title challenge. They were talking yesterday, the Tuesday Club were talking yesterday about the fact that we are currently in title challenging form. And we're in that stage, Kev, where we need to now back him. Do you think he's been backed enough? Can we back him more come the January transfer window?
I don't think he's been backed enough, no. The fact is, he was brung in. He was a late appointment, and there's no other way to dress this up. He was a rushed appointment after Eddie Howe says no, and we can't dress it up any other way. And we can't say, oh, he was second on the list, third on the list, fourth on the list. He was available to take the job, and he was willing to take the job under whatever circumstances. They're like chaotic circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
He does get the club. He really does get the club, but I think that's because he probably gets the club more than some of the people who employ him because of his background, and he's meeting the Celtic fans who are from maybe the same, similar, their families are from a similar background as himself.
Yep.
The Greek immigrant background going into Australia. You listen to him talking about his father and his father's side that he played for. I mean, we all know the Celtic story. We know it. I mean, it was so Ange Postecoglou gets that we were what Celtic Football Club as an entity was. And it was for more than football. We were formed for more than football. And that's where his football ideals come from when you listen to him speak about what his father and his father's countrymen, when they moved to Australia, went through as well. So he does get that. And he'll also get that vibe talking to the fans, because we're the only ones now that carry that vibe. Those that run the football club don't anymore. So if he gets that coming from us, he's going to have all the time in the world for us. Because we're the ones, we're the heart and soul of Celtic Football Club, and we still believe that the club that was formed 134 years ago on Saturday there is the same club that we support, despite the people who are the custodians there.
The thing is as well, Paul, it's interesting to hear Ange come out and say that they're far more prepared for this transfer window than what they were for the summer. That he's already identified his targets, he's already been talking to potential options about coming in as well. The January transfer window traditionally for Celtic has been very, very hot and cold, more on the side of cold. It's usually a case of, if only we'd strengthened here, if only we'd strengthened there. I know Kev's favourite story is the Stephen Fletcher story, but I mean, when you go back as far as that's, when's the last time we had a really good, strong January transfer window that you're thinking, we're in the right position as a team that we need to be, not just for this season, but for next? And as part of the rebuild, you can't really get a January transfer window wrong. You have to be prepared, and hearing that coming from Ange is a positive sign, especially with 6 weeks to go before the window opens.
The big thing is instantly, I think, is some of the transfer windows. I mean, you just have to look at the last one, Colin, where we've gone out there and brought in John Joe Kenny, and I don't think anybody's ever going to look back fondly on that particular transfer window. We knew what we know now, what ensued. I don't think any number of players under those circumstances would have made any bit of difference, because there were deeper running issues at the club. Kevin has alluded to that. We will get onto it, because it's a great point, Kev. You know, it seems as though he does get it a wee bit more than the custodians of our club, who are coming under fire at this moment in time. We will be talking about the protests, and you know, it's not a case of things are going well for the club, Kev, so let's find a negative. It's not that at all. I mean, when you're talking about Celtic Football Club and we focus on the games and that we're playing and winning, which we are at the moment, and all the players and the potential transfer targets, etc., you've also got to look at the backstory and what's happening behind the scenes, and because there is a lot of unhappy Celtic supporters out there, hence the reason that for 2 weeks running there's been protests at Celtic games. So you brought it up, and we will be talking about it. On the note of Ange, for everybody who watches A Celtic State of Mind and who has watched us from the very beginning, we actually have a team who, quite a few of them are behind the scenes as well, so you might not always see them on the broadcast, and quite a few of them were at the Tommy Bunn story last night, so we were getting quite a bit of feedback coming through last night, and for example, one of our contributors who doesn't contribute to the show but behind the scenes, Kevin Tate, was talking about how he was speaking to Ange and his wife, and his wife was surprised at the reaction of the Celtic fans since they came to this country, and how, you know, they didn't really understand how it was like a 24/7 thing when you come to Celtic. So, for example, when you go up to the Forge shopping, they just think you can get away with that. You're not going to get flocked by Celtic fans coming asking for selfies. And it's never been an issue for them, as they proved last night. So we've seen it in the past with Celtic managers going to events, etc. But this event was set up, as I say, by David Carswell, who's been on the show, the Tommy Burns family, and a group of people who have worked really hard behind the scenes, Colin, to pull this all together. And as far as I can see from the feedback, what people are saying is it's a very emotional, a very humorous show. And if you get a chance to go along and see it, then please do that. When Kevin Graham and I started putting a Celtic State of Mind out, we were talking, and it's on the strapline, it's on the synopsis, about the culture of Celtic Football Club, the city of Glasgow, because that's where we're based, and the club's fans. And when you're talking about culture, Kev, part of that is live theatre. So we've got Tommy Burns last night, and then this weekend we've got our very own Jim Orr's show, because we've got Bend It Like Bertie. Is there any club quite like Celtic that taps into all these different aspects of culture, as Celtic Football Club does?
I don't think so. I think it goes down to, if we maybe go back 2 steps to Ange and how he's been like welcomed by the Celtic support, and his wife saying that they couldn't believe it's 24/7, but they have been welcomed. Look, we all want to win games of football, but I think when you scrape away, we support Celtic, and there is a romantic reason that we support Celtic. And if there's a guy coming in from a background we can relate to who wants to play attacking football, we are going to accept him. Especially the way he was brought in, we know it was really not his fault. But then you've got this immigrant background again, which leads to the creative arts, which the oppressed people tell their stories in songs, plays, poems, whatever. And I think the Celtic support is like, we're so blessed to have so many talented people who do stuff like this, like Dave Carswell, like our very own Jim Orr, who put on these plays, and the Celtic support accept this art, this football art, where other clubs might go. I'm not accepting that, because I think it's part of our heritage. I think it's part of the way that we've been brought up. We've been brought up with your grandpa, your uncle, your auntie telling you stories and stuff like that. So a play's just a bigger production of that. A song's just a bigger production of that. And it's just part of us. It's part of us. We will support anything like that. And I'm not surprised that there wasn't a dry eye in the house last night with the Tommy Burns story. I remember the BBC Alba documentary as well. There wasn't a dry eye in the house with that as well. And he is such an important part of Celtic Football Club as Tommy Burns. And Ange Postecoglou, that got through to Ange Postecoglou last night, but I'm already sure that Ange Postecoglou knew who Tommy Burns was before he went and saw that play.
It's an interesting point, Kev makes. We've spoken about it quite a bit, Colin. And for anyone who doesn't know, Kevin and I, Colin, although you were very welcome to come with us, Kevin and I were away down in Manchester yesterday on a State of Mind business, and we'll tell you about that because it is relative and relevant to what we're talking about. There's been a lot of people, Colin, talking about the style of Ange Postecoglou's team, and quite a few folk, maybe from my vintage and those who are a wee bit older than me, have said that, you know, it's harking back to the entertaining style of some of the teams that were built by Tommy Burns. And in particular, we seem to have this three-pronged attack at the moment of Abada, Kyogo and Jota, and people are saying shades of the Three Amigos, etc. So there are parallels between the two, but I keep underlining the fact that you need far more in terms of substance than style when it comes to Celtic. Yeah, the style has always been important, but the substance in terms of winning trophies and winning this particular title. I am now looking at this, and I remember early doors, Kevin Graham, you says to us that if we were still in touch and distance by Christmas, you'd be quite happy. That's what you would expect when you consider everything that was going on when Ange Postecoglou took the job. I think at this moment in time, and yeah, we're a month away or 6 weeks away from that moment, we are kind of at that point, Kev. How big an achievement, and I'll ask you first, Colin, would it be for Ange Postecoglou, right, not only to be in touch and distance, but to actually win this title this season. Now, people might think I'm being a bit premature here and even discussing it. But when you consider the circumstances he walked into at Celtic Football Club, I mean, Newcastle have appointed Eddie Howe, right? So that whole saga, that whole chapter has come to a natural close, and he's got his move to the English Premiership. But in that scenario where it's quite clear that we tried to run that race with Eddie Howe and we fell at the last hurdle, one way or another, there'll be two different versions of that story. And we go to Ange, and he comes over from the other side of the world. And there's absolutely no qualms of, travelling over from a country that he's made an incredible reputation for being a successful manager in. And he comes over on his own, and he inherits a backroom team. And he does his first press conference with a CEO who very quickly is no longer at the club, and a CEO who was part of his introduction to Celtic Football Club and all the discussions that took place. Yet he stayed firm to his philosophy, Colin. He's never overreacted. He's stuck firm when he's been lambasted and targeted by the media. And we're now sitting in a situation where, albeit we're 4 points behind, we've started a run of games where it is the type of form where you're going to claw those 4 points back, I would hope. Big test being on the 2nd of January, of course. How big an achievement would it if after Christmas we're still in Europe? We know we will be, but we win this league. It's going to be massive, isn't it?
I don't think there'll be words to describe it. I mean, you take a look at the mess that we were in last season. Finishing 25 points behind Rangers wasn't just a case of a poor season. It was actually a state of how bad things had got last year, that there was very few points that you probably would have said you could have clawed back out of that 25 if everybody was fit and everybody wasn't off ill. That was a general state of how bad things had got last year. The rebuild that was required when Ange took over was monumental. And we are still, and it has to be said, we are still in the early stages of this. There's still potentially a backroom team to be put together. There's still other members of staff behind the scenes that are looking to be put together. On the park, there's players that are playing week in and week out right now that maybe in 18 months' time you won't see them playing week in, week out. They'll be squad players because Ange will want to bring his own players into that team as well. So the fact that you've got to this stage just now of only being 4 points behind in sort of early November, going into what will be the last international break before the winter break. There's so many breaks in Scottish football. We need to kind of work on that as well. We're just building momentum, and then we've got to take a couple of weeks off. Look, he's in a great position just now. As you said, he needs backed in January. And I see people in the comment section saying, we only go for loans. This has to be different. This has to be a new era at Celtic Football Club where we don't just look at the loan market. Maybe you need them to back up the squad, but when you're rebuilding a team, you have to go and get the permanent signings in. You look at his transfer record so far, and on the whole, it's been fairly positive. Even players that we were sort of sceptical about or didn't have the great start to the season have come in and started to play well. When they're out the team, you miss them. And that's a great thing. We are on this run of form right now where in the first sort of third or quarter of the season, whatever way you put it, the first round of fixtures, we had to go to Hearts, we had to go to Aberdeen, we had to go to Hibs, we had to go to Livingston. We had pretty much all of the toughest away games right up front, and Ange had to take that whilst he was still trying to put together a starting 11. Now we've got that starting 11, you're seeing them coming together. The only thing we've got to now work on as a team is to stop conceding goals from crosses. 8 out of the 9 goals that we've conceded this season have came from crosses. And secondly, to work on a way to get through this low block that's set up when teams come and put 10 men behind the ball. Once you can get to that and you can kind of crack that, you're thinking we are on a right good run here. I think back to the team under Martin O'Neill that went 19 games unbeaten. And that should be the focus. We have to go as long as possible unbeaten to give us as much chance as possible to win this league. Rangers, depending on what happens with their manager, depending on what happens with their players, we've saw that they can drop points. The focus on us must be to keep winning because, look, let's be honest. I mean, you can break it down to simple maths, but the title's actually ours to lose. We've got 3 more games against them. That's 9 points. We're only 4 behind right now. You could go and win that title by 5 points at the very least if you win every game between now and the end of the season. It's a big ask, and people will say you can't just look at it like that, but you have to take on every game one at a time, and the focus on every game, especially being at Celtic, is to win.
You know, Colin, if you had spoken in any of those kind of tones, even a couple of months ago, I thought you'd have been, wildly off the mark. But I am looking at a team now, Kevin, where, there'll be drop points. You wouldn't expect us to win every single game, but there is a team and there is a momentum there that seems to be capable of putting a run together. We're in the midst of a very short run at the moment, but I think we could continue to push that on. My only concern, I'm going to be totally honest about this, is that at this moment in time, we're in a run of games against Rangers, and obviously the next one's going to be on the 2nd of January, where we haven't found a way. Now, Colin quite rightly points out that we haven't found a way to break down, these teams like Livingston, who came to Celtic Park and frustrated us, and we couldn't find a way to break them down. It was a slightly different game at home than it was away, where in terms of the performance at home, we were completely dominant. We just couldn't find a way to break them down. Whereas away from home, obviously, there was the defensive frailties that seemed to have plagued us at times this season. But there is this concern, Kevin, and it is down to the fact that we haven't found a way for some time now to beat Rangers, and it is Rangers under Steven Gerrard. Now, Colin alludes to the fact that there may be some moves between now and the end of this year, maybe even the end of this week, according to the reports this morning. There might be some kind of movement in the next 48 hours. In terms of that, there is no denying the fact, Kevin, that we have struggled to beat Steven Gerrard's Rangers in the recent past. How big a factor would that be if there was a managerial change across the city for Celtic?
I'm not really bothered if there's a managerial change or not. I'm not particularly concerned, but if there is, how does that affect this bad run Celtic have had against Steven Gerrard's Rangers if Gerrard and his backroom team are no longer there? I go back to, you talk about when Gerrard took over at Rangers and it took him a little while to actually get a result over Celtic. And the turning point was the League Cup final and the game 3 weeks later when they beat us at Celtic Park. I walked out of Celtic Park that afternoon going, by the way, they've got us now. This is no longer us just going to turn up and win. It's the same with us. We've got a brand new team. We played okay at Ibrox earlier on in the season. Now we've got a game coming up at the 2nd of January at home against them. These things seem to go in swings and roundabouts, and I'm quite happy it will eventually turn. And if we can get a bit of momentum up to the 2nd of January, then hopefully it will be the 2nd of January. If there is a change of management team at Rangers, then depending how quick they get another manager in, depending who it is, depending if he tries to bring in his own style, I don't think whoever they'll bring in will try to change very, very much. It'll probably be, I do hate the term steady ship, a steady hand on the ship, but I don't think they'll try to change it too much. But it'll be how the players react to the guy who's possibly revitalised a lot of their careers up in sticks and leaving. I know the Brendan Rodgers klaxon at 23 minutes in. That sounded like a digital klaxon there. that was our big worry when Rodgers left for Leicester City.
That was seismic, Kev.
How were these players going to react? I mean, I don't know if Gerrard leaving Rangers can be compared to Rodgers leaving Celtic, because that's up for Rangers fans to debate that. But I know, you're right, Paul, it was seismic for the Celtic support and that club. And I'm going to say it, I'm always thankful for Neil Lennon to be there and come in at that point. It should only have been for the 6 months, but we've discussed that so many times over the thing. But I was so glad that Lennon was there. So I don't know if it's going to be seismic or not. I'm just interested in Postecoglou, what he's going to do with Celtic. If we get to January, I mean, December's a hefty month. It is. There's loads of games that come up in that. And I'm not going to change my opinion. I want us to challenge this season. We're probably overachieved to where I expected us to be at this precise moment in time, really. January is a big month for us. You've got as Colin rightly says, we seem to have more breaks in Scotland than school holidays. Every couple of weeks there seems to be a break. We get to January still in touch, see what we do in January, then come back out to Tynecastle after the winter break, beat Hearts at Tynecastle, then it's game on.
You know, Kevin was quite open, Colin, about his expectations this season. And to be honest, I think it was pretty measured when you consider the full range of circumstances that we were facing. With that, though, with the improvement in the team's performance and in the results, because the results weren't good enough earlier on, have you yourself, Colin, have you pushed your expectations that wee bit higher? Are you now looking for something that wee bit more? Are you daring to dream that we might win the league title this season?
I mean, look, a lot of this came into the consideration when Ange took over, because when you look at the team that we first put out, and you had guys like Stephen Welsh and Dane Murray at centre-half, and this is no disrespect to them, but they two weren't a centre-back pairing that you thought, do you know what, we've got every chance of sort of pushing towards challenging for the title. Being so far behind last season as well, it always kind of lowers your expectations. You never see really a team that's totally revitalised and rebuilt in 12 months, never mind sort of 5 or 6 since Ange took over so far. It is encouraging to see the fact that we are taking each game as it comes, and I think that's the only way you can do it. I know everybody's kind of thinking, right, if we get to this position, we get to January 2nd, we win that game, hopefully they'll have slipped up before then and we'll go top of the table, and then it's a case of us pushing towards that title. But you look around at the squad and you look at guys like Callum McGregor, and he's going to be the one for me that determines how successful this Celtic team are, because you've got a lot of players that are obviously their first season in Scottish football, that come from teams that aren't accustomed to winning games week in and week out, and they've got to build that mentality in there. And having guys like McGregor can help you push that over the line as you get further down. So, yeah, your expectations are slightly higher because of the run we're on. I don't think that if we go and maybe drop points that people's expectations should drop. It is just part of the rebuild, and we are going to, as someone said on here a while back, we are going to take a couple of sore faces this season. But it's how we bounce back from, and so far we've bounced back very, very well. It's going to come right down to the wire, I think. I think we could be talking maybe the last 2 games of the season before you know where the title's going.
It's interesting, though, what Colin says there, Kevin, because it has shown that we've got a bit of character about us. The fact that there has been some bloody noses or black eyes or however way you want to put it, but we've come back from that to the point where Livingston was a disappointment, but it wasn't a disaster. And I think that even after the game, as disappointed as it is, straight after the game to come on and speak about it in the post-match, I don't think we overreacted that afternoon. It was Laura and myself, and it wasn't as if we don't care, because we do, but we were looking at the season in its entirety. Now, there's been a few interesting points. One that I would bring up is, Colin, you mentioned McGregor. I think McGregor and Forrest are the two that you automatically go to as being the people that basically, indoctrinate Celtic into the new players coming in, because you're bringing players in from all corners of the planet now. You're bringing in people from Japan, and you're bringing in Jota from Benfica, etc., and Abada in from Israel. So from all over the place, and it's important to have the nucleus of a team who have got that experience of Celtic. But what's also interesting, Kev, is as well as your James Forrest and Callum McGregor, you've got to now put in guys like Tom Rodgick and your Beaton, because as I keep banging on about, they guys have got massive experience at Celtic Football Club. They've both been here for almost a decade. They've both got over 200 games under their belt, 250 games. Surely they're as important. They're in that same bracket in terms of the experienced players that you would look to bring other players under their wing and teach them about the expectations of the Celtic support and the traditions of this club?
You would look at the characters in the dressing room, and you look at the number of, as you say, you would rightly have a look at. I'm going to call him Nero because I got him wrong last week against when I says I wouldn't have him anywhere near the team. But you look at Nero Beaton and you have a look at James Forrest. But then again, I was considering this other week there when Anthony Ralston got his contract for 2025. And I was going to wonder if that's for a bit of continuity. He's bought into the Postecoglou way. Postecoglou likes him in the dressing room. He leads by example on the pitch. Then you get the long-term contract for Greg Taylor, another player who's well-versed in Scottish football, who's played maybe over 100 games for Kilmarnock and Celtic combined. He gets a contract to 2025 as well. Postecoglou also says he's bought into what I'm trying to do. He was doing really well before we were injured. So you need that continuity, and signing these two guys long term, no matter what you think about their ability, is a sign that Postecoglou's probably having a look at a Scottish core in that dressing room who's been around the block. Anthony Ralston's been at the club since he's been 8. He knows the football club, so he'll be able to help young guys like Jota, Abada as well, along with the older guys as well. Joe Hart, by the sounds of things, is utterly outstanding in the dressing room when dealing with like the young guys and what he expects and what they expect a Celtic Football Club. Joe Hart's been to a lot of big football clubs, and he knows what Celtic expect. He knows what big clubs expect. So you do need those characters in the dressing room. But also, guys like Jota are stepping up to the mark. They're talking about the Celtic family. The team's coming together nicely after basically being thrown together at the end of August. And yes, we are going to drop points because that's what football clubs do. It's like part and parcel of the games. Kyogo we have to talk about Kyogo. He can't even speak English, but he seems a big, massive part of that dressing room. You see him going round all the players at the final whistle, cuddling them, and like those, they're all trying to communicate. They're all trying to communicate with him as well. So there's a good harmony there, and that needs to continue with other signings that get brought in. But I mean, we were all worried about when Scott Brown left. I think there's more leaders in that dressing room now that Scott Brown's away. There's more guys that have stepped up to the plate.
Yeah, it's a good point.
I've got to say, Paul, when I was at the game on Sunday, the one thing that I kind of took away from it, apart from the great performance, was Joe Hart and his sort of ability to command not just his own area, but everyone else on the park. When Dundee scored their first goal, Juranovic trips and falls in the net, falls on top of the ball. Whether it's deliberate or not, who knows? But in comes the number 5 for Dundee, the boy Sweeney, and he just starts kicking at him, trying to get the ball back, but properly kicking in at Juranovic. And Juranovic, quite rightly, gets up, very upset, starts to go towards him. They have a bit of a kind of pushing match. But Joe Hart literally bear hugs Juranovic, pulls him back into the net, has a word with him. It's like a teacher or a father talking down to a son, basically saying to him, like, get a grip, calm down, you're going to get yourself sent off. Holds on to him, stops him from getting even further involved. And you could see Juranovic was still kind of upset, was still a bit kind of wired as he was about to kind of walk away from Joe Hart. But the kind of you saw that Joe Hart's kind of taking that leadership upon himself. Yeah. He kicks him in the backside and basically says to him, get a grip. And from that point on, Juranovic in the second half and the first half of the game as well, he was being targeted by the Dundee players. You might not see it on the telly, but off the ball, he's kind of pushing. He's getting pushed every other second, and he calms down, and Hart's talking him right through the game. That's the kind of leadership that Kev's kind of alluding to there when Brown left last season. He was the one that could talk players through games. Even from being in the goalkeeper, he's able to talk his back four through the games. Look, he made a big mistake for the second goal, but he got over it and they moved on. Hart is a massive, massive bonus to that dressing room this season.
Listen, see that point on Hart? The thing that impressed me most about that, because he did take the sting out of it, Colin, 100%. Hart had already left his area to remonstrate with the defence because we've just conceded a soft goal. So he had to turn on his heels and get back in to resolve that scenario. If you watch it, he's already away out of his box to talk to the defence because they've allowed the ball to get in, and he's had to go back and do it. So it was kudos to Joe Hart, because before you know it, it's fisticuffs and red cards are getting thrown about, and then it's a different game entirely. So yeah, absolutely agree with that. Sorry, Kevin, I cut you off there, pal.
No, that was a great point, Paul. It's like Tony Ralston as well with Kyogo in the European game. It's another reason why, apart from Ralston's outstanding performances this season, is because he's been in and around Scottish football for so long as well, that makes him invaluable in that dressing room as well. It's the same with Greg Taylor. That's why these guys have got long-term contracts. They've bought into Ange, and Ange knows himself that he's going to need guys who know this is going to happen at Dens Park. This is going to happen here. This is going to happen at, I was going to say Rugby Park there, but hopefully we didn't see Rugby Park for quite a wee while again. But you need guys that know that, and you need more than Callum McGregor. And you do need more than Callum McGregor. And I think it's been one of the great plus points that we lost a great leader in Scott Brown, but we've actually gained about 4 or 5 great leaders now, because there's not one focal point now.
Now, absolutely. And, you know, in many ways, you've got to take the positive from the way you've explained that there, because I think Callum McGregor has become more of a leader in the absence of Scott Brown. Now, Joe Porter comes in with a good point. On the point of leaders, he says, have they not backed him? He has signed a few players already. He has. One of the things that I look at, though, is the players that we've brought in, we were kind of forced to bring them in. So let me explain. So in terms of leaders, I spoke about Chris Ayer, because I thought he was a leader and I wanted to keep him. Of the 3 players we expected to leave, I wanted to keep Chris Ayer. Big fan. And I think he's going to go on to have a tremendous career down south and elsewhere. When Postecoglou came in, however, I felt that the player of the 3 that most suited Postecoglou's system was Ryan Christie. But when you're looking at the players that he has brought in, as Joe Porter alludes to, so we lost Chris Ayer and we brought in Starfelt. We had to bring in another centre-half because obviously Julien's injury has taken longer to recover from. So we brought in, not an emergency, but we brought in a temporary fix in Cameron Carter-Vickers. Whether or not that turns into a permanent fix remains to be seen. We lost El Yunusi because he's gone back to his parent club, but we brought in another loanee in Jota. And we've lost Christie, and I don't think it's a like-for-like replacement, but we've brought in Abada, who can also play in the right and in the centre, which was 2 of the areas that Christie was deployed in. So although we have brought in a lot of players, Colin, I get the sense that, and even Juranovic, who you've mentioned, we brought in Juranovic, he was our first permanent replacement for Frimpong. You know, because prior to Frimpong was the aforementioned John Joe Kenny, which was just a sticking plaster, which quite quickly fell off when we started seeing him playing. So the replacement for Frimpong is Juranovic. So it's almost as if we're replacing players. And I think what we need this January is something a wee bit more than that. We need to strengthen the squad, not just replace the ones that we've lost, Colin. So one of the things I've pitched, and it's not a personal thing, I just don't think that the 4 players in Bolingoli and Barkas and Ayeti and Soro are contributing at the moment. I think we need to cut our losses, bring in as much as we possibly can. And I don't think we're replacing them like for like, so it's not a contradiction as such. But bring in 3 players who are going to contribute to that squad, because at the moment those 4 are not. In terms of the transfer dealings, are there any others, do you think, Colin, that we will be shipping out? How many players do you think we need to bring in?
I would like to think that this January window we'll be able to pick up somewhere between 4 and 6 players. And I know that's a lot considering the kind of transfer business that we've had before, but it's still part of this rebuild. You've still got to add to the squad, as you're saying. Guys like Barkas wasn't even as part of that travelling squad. When's the last time you've seen Barkas go to a Celtic game and not been sitting in the stands? Barkas' Celtic career is most likely done. We had Toby Oluwayemi, who's the England under-19 goalkeeper. He travelled out to Hungary at the weekend. It was Conor Hazard that was there. I don't see Barkas coming in. If he's not even the number 3, then I think that the likelihood is that we will cut our losses in January, and I don't know how much of a loss we'll make on that. Albion Ayeti as well. I think his time at Celtic's probably came to an end. He's been given his chance under Postecoglou. He had a couple of decent performances earlier on in the season, but nothing ever to kind of shout home about. So I would see him being one that goes. Bolingoli's a strange one though, because he just randomly starts to come in away games. Like Livingston away, I think, did he play Motherwell away as well? He just kind of throws him in randomly. I think possibly if he had the chance, he would have probably had him in his European squad as well. But that all comes down to the fact that we don't have enough homegrown players to allow that to happen. He could be one that we move on. I still don't think we've signed a like-for-like replacement for Scott Brown. And I think that's something that we do need to look at in January. I know Callum McGregor's playing that role there as well, but Callum McGregor runs himself into the ground week in and week out, and we can't expect him to play 90 minutes like that without eventually picking up an injury. And you saw what happened when he did pick up the injury, because when we kind of lost him and we lost Kyogo, then we kind of took the what's good out of the spine of the Celtic team and couldn't replace it like for like. We couldn't get those players to come in. So already you're looking at maybe a second choice goalkeeper, you're looking at another centre half, you're looking at another centre midfielder, you're looking at another centre forward, and that's just 4. And there is other players that you're probably going to need to bring in, sort of either backups or someone who's going to challenge for positions. Tom Rogic, this time last year, a lot of people were writing Tom Rogic's Celtic career off. Now he's out the team, we're missing him badly.
Yeah.
So we need someone that's going to play that other sort of number 10 role in front of there. There's 5.
Do we have that player? Do you think he's just maybe not playing there? I mean, Jim Orr continually advocates for Abada to play through the centre. He thinks he's more of a central player. Do we already have the player? I mean, people are going on about Kyogo and Giakoumakis both playing at the same time, both starting for Celtic. Maybe as Giakoumakis is the spearhead with Kyogo behind him. Is it just a case of we're continually playing with the same, 3 in the middle, and when Rogic drops out, we're maybe not putting as such a creative force in there? I'm just thinking, I agree with you with the Scott Brown comment, and obviously you've got the romantics amongst us, of which I know Kevin Graham is one, who thinks, Victor Wanyama, 30-year-old, I'd be up for that. But I don't know if the club would be up for bringing back Wanyama. Maybe be more of a younger option, or indeed someone who's been directly identified by Ange Postecoglou. We are expecting perhaps a contingent coming in from the Japanese league that we might know very little about, on the face of it, but Ange will know them very well. And in terms of, pound for pound, if you're looking at the 4.5 or so that you pay for Kyogo, and you compare it against a similar fee that you pay for Starfelt, it looks as though you get plenty bang for your buck if you're going to bring in players from that market. So I would agree with that holding midfield player, but he does seem to like Nir Bitton as well, Colin. And I know in the past you've liked Bitton, but there's players there that I think you've got to put into a category of player who have been revitalised by Ange Postecoglou. Now, the obvious one's Tony Ralston, right? And people are calling for him to get a Scottish international call-up. If you had said that this time last year, no one would have believed you. So, fair play to Tony Ralston for doing that, because it's down to his hard work and a bit of self-belief as well. I think Tommy Rogic, you've already mentioned him, he's been revitalised. Would you say, I'm going to throw this one to you first, Kev, do you think Nir Bitton, is it too early to say that Bitton's maybe been revitalised? He seems to have put in a few assured performances.
Bitton in certain games does a job. In other games, he's just like an empty crisp poke. It's games that
so against... what's an empty crisp poke then?
Well, you ever seen just one of the crisp pokes that just blow about Celtic Park in the wind and just aimlessly for 90 minutes just swirls about and doesn't do nothing? I like Thomas Grammerson, but the game against Livingston, perfect example. Nir Bitton was a waste of a Celtic jersey.
Right. Against
Friday, he done a job. Against Dundee, he done a job. At home against Livingston, Dundee United are that. He's not on. He can't play. I think that's been proved. Has he been revitalised under Ange? He's probably took his opportunity. We all know that he did have a certain amount of ability. Would I be thinking that he's one of the players that Ange reckons that he can upgrade? I think he will be one of the players that Ange reckons that he can upgrade. When Colin's talking about the January transfer window there, I really do think that we need to bring in 2 players that Ange really wants, and that's probably going to be a forward striker and another midfielder, and the rest will be brought in depending on who leaves the club. Because, as Colin already says, it is a difficult transfer window to try and get anything done, especially permanent deals done.
The thing is, Kev, we're not fearful. I mean, we lost the big 3, regardless of whether you rated Christie or Ayer. Christie, Ayer and Edouard were big contributors to the Celtic side over a period of time. We've already lost those 3. There is no real fear that we're going to lose a big player, is there, in January?
No, I don't think so. And Colin mentions a centre half as well. I don't think we'll lose a big player. I think the club will have a look. There's a lot of fringe boys there. The 2 Sheffield Wednesday guys that we've never seen might actually end up getting put out on loan to League One Championship sides or something like that. I also think we're banking on seeing what Julien's back when he what Julien's like when he comes back. So that if there's money to be spent, if there's money going to be spent, it will be, for me, in the forward area or another midfielder, because the stats already show it. Ange already says it. He wants to rotate Turnbull and Rogic, but he has to got the players there to do it. Mm-hmm. So that's an area that he is going to look at.
I tell you what, here's a kind of one to consider between now and January. If we do target a striker, and I know guys like Maeda have been the kind of one that's been floating around, we do only tend to play one up front. That sort of pushes Giacomattis' minutes back a bit further as well. At the minute, I don't think he's someone who has necessarily settled into Scottish football, probably needs a bit of time to adapt. He's not going to get that, not be getting minutes. Is he someone that we could potentially put on loan for the second half of the season?
You talking Giacomakis?
Yeah.
I just wonder, you've got the thing of getting minutes in his legs, but in terms of the belief you've got in him, I'm not sure if it would have an adverse effect on his confidence. You know, a lot of these strikers we've put them out and they've just never come back. You know, you end up, they're running out their contract elsewhere or they go for a nominal fee. I wanted to pick up, Colin, because I don't disagree with the areas of the park you're talking about. But it was a throwaway comment about Wanyama. If we're talking about Beaton, and it looks as though Sorrell's out the picture, it just doesn't look as though he's going to be suited to Ange Postecoglou, right? And he came in and he looked brilliant, for half a dozen games. Remember when he was introduced to the side against Lille, then he got the food poisoning in the cup final, etc. We know how the season panned out. Where does it leave? Because we've spoken about Beaton. The other player in that position is James McCarthy. We've not spoken about James McCarthy. Julien, his future all depends on how he hits the ground running. We're keep expecting McCarthy to have that moment where we're like, right, he's fit now. I mean, he seems to be in a wee bit in limbo. I mean, as a Celtic board, what I'm talking about is we need to back the manager. We can't be looking at that position and say, well, we've got 3 players there. We've got Beaton, Sorrell and McCarthy. We don't need another one, because not one of those is my first choice. And I don't think any of the 3 are really Ange Postecoglou's first choice. You're looking at left-back situation. Greg Taylor's just signing a new contract. I think it's important to point that out, because I think he's your first choice left-back. You look at the other left-backs we've got at the club, or players who can be played in that position. I don't think the board want for us to go out and buy a left-back. You look at the right-back position, I think we've got cover there. We'll lose a goalkeeper in Barkas, I'm sure. But they'll say, well, we've got another 3 or 4 goalies. We'll no strengthen that. I think they're probably thinking the same in the centre-half position. With regards to, Julien's coming back. We've already spent big money on Starfelt. We've got Welsh. We've got Carter Vickers. And I think that's the way that the board operate. If you've got 2 or 3 players in there, that's enough. It's bodies. What I'm trying to say is, what if, like that number 6 position, all the players you've got aren't really your first team pick? And that's where the club really needs to back Ange Postecoglou now. So if he's unhappy, Kev, with the 3 number 6s that he's got, and I think he will be, because one of them never plays in McCarthy, one of them doesn't seem suited, and one of them, like you say, Kev, he can play He's versatile in that, but he's never your first. He's never your first pick near Beaton, is he? So I think that's what I'm talking about. Proper backing. If he wants a number 6, go out and buy a first pick number 6, and everybody else can argue the toss about who replaces him if that player is injured or suspended.
Definitely, he didn't go and buy 2 3-piece suites when you've already got a good one sitting in the living room, and understand where the board will look at it. But I think Ange will go to them, I desperately need this and this, but if we can get it done, if we can move on X, Y and Z, then I want replacements in there for them. But we've got to, I mean, it is a budgetary thing. As you says, Paul, I mean, Ange Postecoglou was backed by numbers 12 players, but they just filled in gaps. That was just like...
That's a few bodies down, I think, still.
We're still a few bodies down. And that was just patching up stuff. Now we're actually looking at going, we're going to need to improve the squad.
Yeah.
We are going to need to improve the squad. So to improve the squad, we need to give Ange the players that he wants, but then there will be areas where the board will quite rightly go like that. By the way, you've got 3 centre-halves, you've got this, you've got that.
Yeah.
So you need to actually make decisions on how to move these players on. But that's just football. That is how football works. I would rather the board weren't make that decision. There was somebody in the football department making those decisions rather than a bunch of accountants.
See, the point you made, Colin, about the centre forward, and I get what you're saying, because giving him 20 minutes here and there doesn't seem to be working at the moment for Giakoumakis. You want to give him a run, but you can't do that and not play Kyogo because he's dynamite. The problem I would have with that is it leaves us really short in that position, because I am expecting Ayeti to leave, and then you're bringing 2 in. If, for example, and I'm in total agreement, we need another striker, particularly if Ayeti goes, and I expect him to either on loan or permanently, you need another number 6. Where else in the park? Because I'm pretty happy with the wingers. If Forrest is coming back, Johnston's coming back, you've got Jota, you've got Abada. I'm quite happy with the left and right side of the park. Like Kevin says, I doubt that we're going to go out and get a left back, because they'll say, well, we've got Montgomery and we've got Taylor and Juranovic can play there. You've got Liam Scales who can play. That's the way they're going to look at it. So where else on the park do you think? Because I'm looking at a situation, and it is relevant, and I'm not going on about our competitors too much. You've got Hearts, who I think they've done so well. They're still in the mix at the moment. If they go into January and they were to strengthen their squad, they're a different beast. I don't expect it to happen. History tells us that's not going to happen. You've got Rangers, who are currently top of the league. There might be some upheaval there in terms of the manager. That's where this becomes relevant. There might be some upheaval in terms of the finances that have just been released. There might be players leaving. I don't expect players to leave Celtic. And it's at that point that you capitalise. Don't rest on your laurels and just hope that Hearts don't strengthen and hope that Rangers are weakened because 1 or 2 players might leave. We go in and we bring in 3 first picks at that moment in time, and then you're firing on all cylinders until the end of the season, Colin. Do the board have that in them?
You've got to hope so. I mean, history would say no, but you've got to hope that this is a new era. It's a kind of new... You've got to have a new outlook on things. Like, the fans are already telling the board what needs to be done, and Ange will know what needs to be done. As I said, Ange has already come out and said that he's already spoken to some of his targets to come in. I think in the middle of the park, you probably still need 2 midfielders. You need a forward, and I seen a couple of comments in here, and I think I probably agree with him. You probably still need another left back. I know Greg Taylor's not been in. We've been playing Juranovic out there, and he's played fairly well, but it's not his natural position. A natural fullback at left back would be good as well. Scales, I know, Kev, you spoke about the Scales a couple of weeks ago, and you saw watching the Irish Premier League why we're taking this amount of time to come in with Scales. But the performances he's put in, okay, it's been sort of 10, 15 minutes here and there, has been pretty good. Do you think, in that sense, that if we do go target a left back, then Scales is maybe the option at centre half then?
I think Scales is the option at centre half. I think he was brung. I think it's now becoming more and more clear that he was brung as a centre half, and will only get a 15-20 minute run out at left back because Greg Taylor's not there, and Bolingoli is wherever Bolingoli's going to actually be. My comment that I made about Scales coming in, from the Irish League. I watched St Pat's against Bohemians, and I've watched a couple of League of Ireland games, and I do understand why they're talking about them getting to acclimatise to the Scottish game, because while I completely enjoyed the St Pat's Bohemians game, and the wee guy that plays up front for Bohemians, Ross Tierney, who's signed for Motherwell, he looks a fabulous player, but I wonder how long it's going to take him to adjust to the Scottish League. There is an adjustment there. It was great entertainment, but I understand now where they're saying this is a step up, and maybe we were expecting far too much from Scales right away. But I must admit, against Raith Rovers, and when he's came in, he's not put a foot wrong. When he came on against Friday last week, he never put a foot wrong either. He will get chances. I really do believe that he's get chances, but I'm going to err on the side of the management team at the moment, that they know best at the precise moment in time, and are just edging Liam Scales into this side when he's actually ready. So not to put too much pressure on the lad.
But see, the thing is, Paul, we spoke about this last year, is you ideally want 3 players for each position.
Yeah.
You want a first choice, you want someone pushing, and then you want someone that when you've got a scenario that you're kind of suffering with a couple of injuries, or somebody to come in there. Now, I think if you get to the position where you've got 3 picks for every position, you have a squad that is ready to go and challenge for the title and also to dominate Scottish football. You take a look back to the team back in the Invincible season, and you look at that midfield, and you had McGregor, and you had Brown, and you had Armstrong, and you go to the forward line, and you had Dembele, and you had Griffiths. You even had guys like Aitchison that were kind of on the fringes and coming through. It's all about building a squad that can challenge. We are going through 50, 60 games a season. There is going to come a point we're going to pick up an injury here or there. And when the second choice comes in, you still want to be able to turn to the bench and say, I've got someone that if it's 0-0 against Livingston with 20 minutes to go, I can throw someone on and change it up. We are still in that position where you look at the bench that we had at the start of the season, and it was a lot of youngsters that hadn't played a lot of minutes for Celtic that were coming through. Guys like Murray, guys like Montgomery. Now, when you look at the bench there, you've got, the bench on Sunday. Yeah, the bench, it's still pretty strong. Yeah. Now, I seen a comment there from Johnny Ryan saying the wage bill's high. Yeah, that was the case. Under Rodgers, the wage bill was high, but you were getting Champions League football. So if we want to progress, then you are going to have to commit to it. This is, I think, the point that Kevin kind of makes is like, if we want to be this top-tier team, we have to commit. We've got to speculate to accumulate. As Fergus McCann said, build it and they'll come. Build the team and you'll get to that point. We've got the money in the bank. We've taken the risk before and it's worked for us. You've got a quality manager there now. It is about time that we backed him. And in the next couple of seasons, you'd like to think that we can be a team that can challenge, not maybe to get out and into the last 16, but at least be a comfortable Champions League team.
See, Kev, on you go, sorry.
Sorry, I think the problem that we've got there, Colin, is football fans, we are impatient. We are really impatient, but for me, I'm prepared for an evolution, not a revolution. And we might not get the 46 players in January because it's just not feasibly possible until the squad gets moved about. But as long as we get the players in, the 2 players or the 3 players that Ange desperately wants in January, then I'm fine with that. I'm really fine with that. But you mentioned the bench and all of that. We've already seen that this season when Kyogo was put on the bench after getting injured against Hibs. And there was no way he was coming on in the last 20 minutes if we were 2-0 up against Hibs. So we need another option on the bench. We do need a stronger bench. But again, there's going to be some players we're going to need to run with this season that might not be there in 18 months' time.
See, the thing, Kev, right? Red Scotland came in and said we need 4 players. I wouldn't disagree with that. I'm going to get a balance between what Colin said and what you've said here. I think this January window, there's going to be a lot happening between now and then, and I'm not focusing on a specific other club, but the league leaders, I feel, will be going through a lot of changes in terms of their own management structure. I mean, it's the hot story at this moment in time on the sports channels as we speak. It might be happening sooner rather than later. They also might, let's say, lose a couple of players in January. It's at this moment that I don't think we can hedge our bets. We've got an opportunity here if we bring in 4 players in January that are going to be contributing to the first team, that it puts us in a really strong position. And I think that if the board fail to do that and fail to back Ange Postecoglou to the point where they've done all they can do to bring in those 4, as I say, first picks, first team players, then there's going to be a lot of unhappy Celtic supporters come the end of the season, because otherwise we are in that situation where it's sticky plaster time. You get another injury to Callum McGregor or Kyogo or Joe Hart. Right, Joe Hart gets injured. You know, these are big players for Celtic. Cameron Carter-Vickers gets injured right now, and we've got a problem. So these are the things that, as a Celtic board, we can't just hope for the best, because history tells us the best never happens for you. You're always going to have these situations with suspension and injuries where you're actually putting out a shadow side at times. Now, Colin, I agree with you with regards to the bench, because I always comment on the strong bench. Only domestically. I think we get shown up for the lack of depth in our squad every time we play a European game. And you're looking at that bench and you've got at least 2 players that have never kicked the ball competitively for Celtic. And with the young goalkeeper, there's a third. If we do put the 2 Sheffield Wednesday signings in, Usazi, Urigidi and Liam Shaw out on loan, that's 2 first-team players. That's 2 guys who sit on the bench for every European game gone. If we do ship out your Bolingoli, Soro, and Ayeti and Barkas, that's 4 first-team squad players gone. So your 6 that you said at the top of the show then, Colin, actually looks realistic, because if you don't put another 6 in, you're then going into the depths of your squad, and that's young, inexperienced players. And I just think that we're talking about it just now because, you know, in a couple of months' time, we're going to be in the realms of bringing players into the club, certain players leaving, maybe on loan, maybe permanently. But we can't come out of that transfer window. And we're looking at, for example, we've got 2 right backs, but one of them's playing left back. We've got Liam Scales, but he's not really, you know, tested at this level. We can't go into that. We've got James McCarthy, who can play as a holding midfielder, but he's never fit. We can't really go into the second half of the season with all of these dilemmas. What we need, if we need a centre-half, go and buy one. If you need a left back, go and get a left back. I don't have any issue with bringing in a couple of loan deals, as long as the loan system is built like Carter-Vickers and Jota, where it's a player where there's longevity or the potential for longevity, and there's an option to buy. If we do that with a player, I have no issue with that.
See, on that as well, Paul, when you look at the 2 loan signings this season, in Jota and in Cameron Carter-Vickers, they're both guys. All right, Carter-Vickers never got his opportunity at Spurs, but he'd played 4 or 5 seasons in the Championship. He had the experience of playing football. You take a look at Jota, he had, over 20 appearances for Benfica. He was out on loan last season, playing a full season. These are guys that had first-team experience of playing football. When we used to sign guys like Paddy Roberts, as good as he was, these are guys that maybe hadn't got through and were still playing B-team football or were playing under-23 football. So the loan signings that we've got to bring in, you've got to try and find those gems like Jota and Carter-Vickers and not guys like John Joe Kenny. So that's got to be the focus for the January transfer windows. You get a couple of players in, but you also get guys that are looking to have something to prove.
Oh, definitely, because otherwise they wouldn't be at Celtic. I mean, if Jota didn't have something to prove and he was getting a game for Benfica, we're not in the market for a player like him. Interesting enough, he's got a £6.5 million first. We've got the first refusal for 6.5. He's got one of them absolutely astronomical buyout clauses that Ryan Gold had at Sporting Lisbon. You know, it's tens of millions of pounds, but obviously we've done a deal with Benfica. But that all comes down, and Ange Postecoglou's spoken about this, comes down to the player. At the bottom, you know, at the end of the day, it comes down to the player. Does he want to come here permanently? And if he's enjoying his football, like you say, Colin, and he seems to feel wanted, that can, this Celtic family that he's referred to, that can make a big difference. This has been really, you know, over the last hour, very, very easy to talk to you 2 guys, because I thought we had about 15 minutes more, but we don't. I don't want to finish the show off by refusing or failing, Kevin, to speak about our endeavours yesterday. Crack it on. You and I and a few others jumped in the wagon, and away to Manchester we went I'll talk about the first part. You can talk about the second part. So we went down. We're talking about culture earlier on, and the Tommy Burns and the Bend It Like Bertie plays. There's a few more tickets actually available for Bend It Like Bertie. The top rack, I believe there's some available there. I've seen Des McLean tweeting about it earlier on. So the links to the tickets will be on Jim Orr's Twitter page and Des McLean's Twitter page. So or you can visit the Beacon Arts in Greenock website and get your tickets there. Or indeed, you could subscribe to ACSOM, because we've got a couple of tickets that we're giving away today. So get subscribing if you haven't done already on YouTube. So we go down to Manchester. It's a place, Kevin, that in terms of music, I have a great affinity with Manchester. So a lot of the bands that I've listened to throughout most of my life, Joy Division, New Order, The Smiths, The Stone Roses, and so on and so forth. Happy Mondays, Oasis. It goes on and on and on. Great bands from Manchester. And we go down there to interview and record an unplugged session with Gaz Whelan, who is a founding member of Happy Mondays. Happy Mondays' seminal album, Pills and Thrills, is now 30 years of age, which is incredible. So Gaz gave us a full unplugged session, and he done the interview. And there is a Celtic connection here, because the only front cover of the NME that Gaz Whelan appeared on, although the Mondays were on loads of them, the only one he appeared on, he was wearing the Republic Island rugby shirt. And he also wore that in the video to Kinky Afro, I think, Kev.
Kinky Afro, aye.
Right? So obviously we're going to chat about that, which we did not on camera, just when we were getting set up. And he was talking about how his family are from Manchester, Scotland and Ireland. And we started talking about the Irish thing. And he was also telling us about the football clubs that he is passionate about. He's a big Red, but he also supports Celtic, does Gaz Whelan. So there's another one to the celebrity fan club. But he has a soft spot for Queen of the South. Now, the reason for that is he goes into a sports shop in 1978 when he's up visiting his family in Scotland, and he wants to buy a Scotland top because England won it in the 78 World Cup. Am I right in saying that?
No.
Am I getting my facts right? So he's supporting Scotland because obviously his family are from Scotland. He goes into the sports shop, but he's in Dumfries and they sell him a Queen of the South top instead of a Scotland one. So he's followed their progress ever since, but he's a Celtic and Man United fan. So that was the first part of our day. Kevin, I'll let you pick up on the second part, because we were visiting other areas within Manchester in the second half of our day.
We were, yes, and for all the listeners or the viewers at this precise moment in time, I can actually tell you that Gaz Whelan has got a Celtic state of mind. Bottom line, he's got a Celtic state of mind. After that, went the wrong way. The sat-nav took us the wrong way. Nothing to do with me getting the wrong postcode whatsoever. That wasn't my fault. We ended up in the Northern Quarter in Manchester, and we went to see the lads for the Stretford Paddock, which is the biggest Manchester United channel as well. And we're going to be working with them in the future, doing some stuff in that as well. And they were great lads. They showed us around their studio. And it was a really good day. It was meeting Gaz and meeting the lads from Manchester as well. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I really did enjoy it. They've got some set up down there in Manchester and the Stretford Paddock lads. But it was a good day, Paul. It was a real decent, a long day. And there was a couple of times I thought we were in a ditch on the way back up the road, but it was a good day. It was.
But you were in safe hands, Kev, because obviously I was at the wheel, and they were talking about Ollie being at the wheel, and that's why they were interested in our take on the whole Brendan Rodgers thing.
That was a big thing they wanted to speak to us about. We were going to do a video with them, but we just didn't have time, and that's what they wanted to speak to us about Brendan Rodgers going to Man United eventually.
But watch this space, Kev, because we're going to go back down. Kevin Graham is that guy who basically builds bridges between ACSOM and the Anfield Rap and Stretford Paddock. So you've built a relationship with the Anfield Rap over a number of years, actually, Kev. Mm-hmm. And you're now doing the same in the Stretford Paddock, which is great, because if we're down there, neck of the woods, and they want to talk to us about something Manchester United / Celtic related, we're always happy to do that. Same with the Liverpool guys. And if they're up here, they're always welcome as well. Colin, I thought you were going to come in with something there, mate.
I know, I was just going to say, with Ollie being at the wheel, hopefully that won't be for too much longer. In fact, I hope it is for a bit longer, just so he can roll out the pain after the 5-0 defeat from Liverpool the other week. But no, just before we wrap up, Paul, there's some breaking news that came out whilst we were on air that I think we do have to touch on. With 2 bits of breaking news. First of all, Celtic's been granted planning permission for the redevelopment of Barrafields, so that looks as if that will be going ahead. And also, Ange Postecoglou has been named Manager of the Month for October, so massive shout out to the gaffer there.
Massive shout out. We started off the top of the show talking about Ange. I think in terms of what is ACSOM's relationship with Ange, well, the big thing is, sometimes we get accused of having a narrative. I think that's very difficult to have one because there are so many contributors to the show. And Colin and Kevin, you can back me up on this. At no point are you sent an agenda of things you must discuss, and this is the opinion of ACSOM. That's not the way we work. The Monday guys speak about what they're speaking about, and it goes on throughout. And every day there's a different panel, and the whole idea behind that, so we get a whole wealth of different ideas and views. And the 3 guys on this show, we don't always agree on things. We disagree on quite a lot of things Celtic related, and that's healthy. And, if you're going to be building an argument, it's brilliant to have that debate. But the view on Ange Postecoglou, I think it's been mainly positive. I think as a team, we've looked at the scenario that he was faced with when he came to Celtic, Colin. And now we're now talking about, right, we're a few months down the line, we're entering that bit of the season where we're strengthening again. And I just think it's vital. As the tagline says, it is now vital. I think he's done enough with the tools that he's been given to this stage to get us into Europe after Christmas, to keep us within touch and distance, as was the expectation of Kevin Graham at the beginning of the season, to really back him this time round. If he wants 3 or 4 players that are going to cost a few million quid each, we've got to back him.
Every project has stages. Stage 1's complete. Stage 2 starts from now through to the end of the January transfer window. And we've got to back him every bit as much as we did in Stage 1 as we enter Stage 2 of this rebuild. Now,
I don't know, Colin, if you need to nip off. I know sometimes your time is of the essence, but one final point I want to cover, and it's simply because Kevin and I, etc., we weren't here yesterday. We've not been able to talk about it. There are very many Celtic fans, Kevin, I'm going to come to you for the last word on this, who are unhappy with the way the club's being run. There's been protests, different types of protests, be that silences in the ground for half an hour, tennis balls on the park, the ball is in your court, it's Higgins or the fans. We all know the backstory of this, Kevin Graham. If we enter the January transfer window and Ange Postecoglou doesn't get that kind of backing, there's no way back for the Celtic board.
No, I think Postecoglou's sort of took the heat away for the Celtic board until the leak of the Higgins appointment came about. Whoever leaked that has got their own agenda, I suppose, but it has took the heat away, the heat away for the Celtic board. So then the focus goes on January. Goes on the January transfer window, and it also goes what happens with the Bernard Higgins appointment as well, whether the club dig their heels in or be seen to back down to the supporters' protest, which at the home game was massively backed, but the tennis ball protest seems to have been a bit of a mixed response from the support. But what I've actually seen, what I've read online in that is like a lot of the supporters said, we don't agree with the tennis ball process, but we agree with Bernard Higgins should be nowhere near the football club. It was just the way the protest went. So I think it'll be interesting to see what the board do. If we rewind back to October last year, Neil Lennon would have been sacked if there hadn't been a protest outside the stadium. And we know
They've dug their heels in at that point, Kev. 100%. They dug their heels in. A decision would have been made back in October.
But see, the thing is as well, and you've got to look at it, the protest and things like that, there's an ultimate goal here, and Kev's sort of pointed it out. It's getting the point across that this person will not be welcome in at Celtic Football Club. And protests are set up to kind of cause disruption. Either way, people agree with it, people don't. The point is getting across that Bernard Higgins is not wanted at Celtic Football Club.
The only people that want him seem to be the guys that are making that decision. That's the worry.
Colin and Paul, the only place that football fans can make their voices heard in the most public place possible is the stadium. And that's just a fact of life.
100%.
the thing is as well, just on that point of what will happen if the board don't back Ange Postecoglou in January. Well, the fans made it clear on Sunday. This Christmas, they're giving their heart to Ange Postecoglou. It's time that the board give the wallet to Ange Postecoglou in January.
On that point, because I totally agree with that. I've got to thank everybody for getting involved. Don't know what StreamYard and Twitter are up to, but they don't like each other at the moment, and we'll figure it out. But we are streaming on all the other platforms. As I said earlier on, 2 tickets, bend it like Bertie. Your last chance to enter that competition is by simply subscribing on YouTube. It's free. You get content every single day. Not just the Celtic stuff. You'll be getting live music from Gaz Whelan in a few days as well. So thank you all for joining us. And all that's left for me to say once again is to thank Kevin Graham and Colin Watt for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Thank you.